Well, good morning. It's quite an honor to be here, and just so you know, I just am here because I won the luck of the draw. My daughter Josephine is our Region 1 State Vice President, and she couldn't decide between me and her sister. So they had to do a draw. They actually had to put our names in a hat and pull them out, and I won, so here I am. Thank you. I want to share a story about Josephine. When our kids were young, we bought a motorhome, and we took them to visit their grandparents in Alaska. While visiting Denali National Park, home not only to Mount McKinley, but also known for its wildlife, including grizzly bears, Josephine wandered off, away from the group, in our campground. When we finally found her, she said she had seen a rabbit, and like Alice in Wonderland, thought she should follow it until it scurried down a hole. You see, the fear of the grizzly bear couldn't deter her from following that rabbit, even though she failed to catch it. I recently found a quote that Josephine had saved that speaks to this. It says, "Happy are those who dream dreams and are ready to pay the price to make them come true." Josephine has never allowed fear or failure to dictate her path in life. Living this dream to serve as a state FFA officer certainly did not come easily. As those of you who follow the election process know, serving as a regional vice president for a region other than your own means you followed a massive roller coaster of emotions to get there. But through it all, Josephine had a positive attitude. She had faith that her hard work and preparation would pay off. Now, through the year, from planning trips for a part of her team to visit new chapters in the Western Upper Peninsula, to experiencing the wonders of South Africa with the National FFA's International Leadership Seminar for State Officers, Josephine has certainly made the most of this opportunity to meet new people. This dream has allowed her to get to know many members from across Michigan, as well as state officers from around the country. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to introduce to you my daughter and your Region 1 State Vice President for her retiring address, Ms. Josephine Forbush.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ethan Haywood, and I have had the privilege of growing up with Austin Haywood as my best friend. A couple things that you may have noticed about Austin this year if you had the ability to interact with him. Number one, the guy can eat. Holy cow. We're talking about a kid whose first word was cracker and whose most commonly used dinner phrase is, "Are you going to finish that?" Another thing you may have noticed about Austin is he doesn't always demand to be that person up in the front of the room or at the lectern running things. He likes to fade back, try and build one-on-one relationships and get to know people. And maybe some of that comes up with growing up with an older brother who says literally everything on his mind at all times and never lets him talk. Or some of that may come from just his leadership style. But growing up with him, I realized that whenever Austin stands up in front of a room and speaks, he really has something valuable to share. Because he doesn't share as often as some other people means that what he has to say is something that he has really decided that the people around him need to know. And I know that he is one of the people that I look to for criticism most often. Austin is someone who will always tell you what he's thinking. Austin is someone who will always be there for you, and someone who is ready to try and share what he has learned with those around him. When Austin speaks up, I know that it has made a very large impact on my life, and I'm very blessed to have grown up with a role model that's younger than me, but can still show me the ropes on how to do what I need to do. So Michigan FFA, please enjoy this very rare occasion of 15 uninterrupted minutes of Austin talking and not eating, and me not interrupting him. And please listen to what these two very hard-working individuals have to say. Michigan FFA, I'm very happy to introduce Austin Haywood, your state secretary.
So how many of us have ever done the Saltine Challenge before? Although it's always fun and entertaining, it takes a lot of effort to choke down those crackers.
This is a lot like the challenges we face in life. With every challenge, there are obstacles that stand in our way. like not having enough water to swallow the last few crackers. But somehow, they managed to persevere and succeed in the end. It's through these challenges that we discover personal growth and the ability to adapt to all situations.
It was the first day of basketball practice, my junior year of high school, and there was one question running through my mind. Am I going to play basketball this year? This was something I had been contemplating for the past few weeks. I mean, basketball was a sport that I loved, and I'd played since the second grade, but this year was different. This was my first year on varsity. There was a lot of talented players in the grade above me, and I wasn't very skilled myself. I knew before practices even started, I'd be lucky to play in any games this year. To be honest, I really didn't want to be on the team this year. I didn't want to have to go to practice every single day and not get to play in any games. My parents tried to convince me to play, knowing I would regret the decision not to, but I still wasn't sure. It wasn't until lunchtime that day that I had a conversation with my older brother Ethan that I really realized what I needed to do. He said one simple thing: the only reason you don't want to play is because you're too scared of the challenge. And my perspective changed completely.
It was a beautiful day in mid-October, with the temperatures in the high 60s and the trees displaying their fall colors. My dad, the outdoor enthusiast he is, invited me to join him on a kayaking adventure down the Shiawassee River. I was hesitant at first because of the freezing temperature of the water, but eventually I agreed. I put my phone in a Ziploc bag just in case it got splashed. Setting off on our journey, the smooth ride of the current was relaxing, and the colors of the trees were refreshing. Everything was going smoothly until we hit a rough patch in the river. Trees that came down with a recent storm span almost the entire width of the river. Luckily, there were a couple of openings for us to maneuver through, but the rapids in this section were strong and unpredictable. While attempting to zigzag my way through the downed trees, my kayak had managed to turn sideways, and before I could even comprehend what was happening, the current had tipped me into the river.
Instead of looking at the season like I was doomed with no solution, I saw it as a challenge. This was something I would have to work at day after day if I wanted during playing time. So that's what I did, day in and day out. I worked as hard as I could in practice, diving for loose balls, staying after to work on my shot, and seeking out advice from some of the seniors on the team. Well, as by no means LeBron James, I got better and better as the season went on and continually improved to my personal best. When the end of the season finally came, I'd like to say that I reached my goal I had set to get to play in many games, but unfortunately, I hadn't even come close.
My first thought, as I struggled through the freezing water, not sure which direction the surface was, where's my phone? Even though I obviously had more important things on my plate at the moment, I was worried about where my mobile device had ended up and whether I'd be able to find it again. Eventually, I made it to the surface, but I was freezing in my soaked clothes and my breathing was unsteady. I noticed my kayak upside down on my right, my paddle quickly floating to my left, and my dad straight ahead. I flipped my kayak back over and immediately realized what a terrible idea that was, as it filled with water and began to sink. In that moment, I wanted to shut down and give up. I just wanted to go home, put on some warm, dry clothes, and forget about this whole trip.
I'd played in just 5 of the 25 games that season, and it was never for more than 2 minutes when we were down by 30 points. Heck, I might as well have been the team water boy. When it came time for the start of basketball my senior year, my perspective was completely different. Instead of sitting around debating whether or not I was going to play basketball, I was in the gym shooting a few extra shots before practice that afternoon. I had worked all summer and was finally ready. It was the third day of practice, and everything was going great. Most of my shots were going in, and I was pulling down rebound after rebound. That all changed on a routine rebound. As I was coming down with the ball, I slipped on my teammate's foot, and the next thing I knew, I couldn't put any weight on my right ankle as I crashed to the hardwood floor.
I began to struggle my way to the shore, where I could rest and assess my options for gathering my lost items. Halfway there, I realized that if I gave up now, it would be much harder to catch up with my kayak and paddle that continued to flow further and further away. I decided to turn around and head for my paddle on the other side of the river. Once I grabbed it, I began walking in the direction of my kayak, but something was holding me back, making it harder for me to move and dragging my arms backward. I noticed that my paddle was still in the water, getting caught by the current and unwilling to move forward. Since the water was now chest deep, I had to hold the paddle over my head to keep it out of the water. As I pushed past the current, I found my dad, holding onto my kayak and attempting to get it to shore, while fighting the current himself in his own kayak. Eventually, we both made it safely to shore, but my phone, on the other hand, did not. It was still out there somewhere, but with the continuous current, there was no way for us to know where it was.
With my injury-plagued sports career, I could only assume the worst. I'd broken my arm 3 times already and injured my other ankle that fall in soccer. Luckily, it only turned out to be a sprain, but I still wasn't able to walk on it for 3 days, which meant 2 weeks of rehab and no practice for me. But thanks to the advice from my brother, I wasn't going to let this little challenge stop me, especially after all of the hard work I had put in to get here. I got back to the court a week before our first game. Game day came around, and I was ready. The first quarter went by, and I didn't even get in. But that was okay. I mean, it was a close game. I finally got my shot with just over a minute left in the first half. I went in, got 3 rebounds in a row, and played my best game ever. From there, I really took off. The next game, I got a ton of playing time, even more than some of the starters. I then played in every single game that season and finally reached the goal I had set my junior year. This challenge took a ton of hard work and countless hours in the gym, but thanks to that advice from my brother, I was able to persevere and succeed in the end.
As we recovered on the shore, we were able to compose ourselves enough to stop and think. My dad pointed out that if there was air in the Ziploc bag, there's a good chance it would float to the surface and be carried by the current. If not, it was likely at the bottom of the river where I fell out. I didn't want to go back since that meant getting back in the icy water to search for it and being further away from our final destination ahead. So we continued forward down the river, hoping to find it caught in some tree branches in an easy-to-reach location. After a few minutes of unsuccessful searching, my dad convinced me to go back to where it tipped over. We had already traveled a ways down the river and were now downstream, making it harder for us to go back. I realized that in this case, continuing forward would be taking the easy way out of the search. It was with the encouragement from my dad that I found the strength to push on past the challenging current and accept the time that would be added to our trip. Even though my dad and I never found my phone in the river that day, we went home knowing we did everything we could to persevere through the situation.
Persevere. Always find a way through tough times, even if it's not the original path. Whether it's a life-changing challenge or one faced on a daily basis, there is always a way through it. Approach each new challenge with an open mind, knowing we all possess the ability to overcome it, and encourage others to do the same.
Persevere through that upcoming test. Study an extra hour to get the A.
Persevere past time spent on the bench. Practice to earn a spot on the team.
Persevere through your late-night practices for leadership contests. Know you will perform to the best of your ability.
Persevere past not getting selected for first chair in band. Work harder to improve your musical talent.
Persevere every day in the challenges you face. Know you will get through whatever comes your way.
Michigan FFA, persevere.
Josephine Forbush, you're one of the kindest people I've ever met. Your ability to get along with just about anybody and compromise is truly inspiring. Even when you'd get completely lost, you'd walk through the door smiling, laughing the whole time. Because of you, not only the team, but every member of the Michigan FFA has had a constant encourager and friend. Michigan FFA, our Region 1 State Vice President, Josephine Forbush.
Austin Levi Haywood, you care for the members of the Michigan FFA like you would your own brothers, diligently and selflessly. Your passion for tradition shines through in everything that you do, from those little brown cows to your tractors and your family farm. You never settle for anything but the best, and your constant desire to improve is something that we should all strive for. Michigan FFA, our State Secretary, Austin Haywood.
Hope that you spend your days, but they all add up.